Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. Our guest today is Guillaume Wiatr. We are going to talk about something a little bit different today. I'm leading in with a little bit of suspense here. This is kind of exciting for me because I love to bring on guests and have some slightly different types of conversations that I know are going to be incredibly valuable to our listeners. So I'm going to let you tell us about your business this time, so our listeners have a sense of what they're in for on this episode. Welcome to the show.
Alicia, let's just dive in. Let's reveal the mystery.
Let's dive in. Let's reveal the mystery. Let's talk about what you're doing with your business.
I'll start with a quick story. I think it's best to explain what I do. Many years ago, as I was in the first years of my career, I'm a consultant and I'm a management consultant. I've been a management consultant for over 23 years. The first years of my career, I was working on helping companies, mostly large companies, solve technical problems. And at the time, they were trying to figure out how to enter the space of e-business. Internet was this new things, around the late 90s that, everybody was trying to figure out what they could do with it. I was brought in to help them figure this out because I was from the generation who was really excited about this in the dot-com boom. And one day I was on this assignment where the leadership team at a large energy company wanted me to help them frame a whole technical project, and realized that the problem was the wrong one. They had put a lot of money into fixing this problem, and I realized that they were not fixing the right problem. They wanted to fix a technical problem when their actual situation was, how do we adapt in a world that seems to accelerate, in a world where technology is something we're not sure we understand it, but we have egos that tell us not to say that because we don't want to sound stupid. How do we evolve within our community to work differently? And so in the first meeting of that engagement, I actually derailed my own meeting. I was very scared to do that, but I thought it was the right thing to do. And instead of going through the agenda and talking about specifications and connection speeds and electronic catalogs and so on, I noticed that this team could not really work well together. And I decided to address the elephant in the room. And the way I did this is that I asked if we could just take a piece of paper and draw the project. And so picture this: I'm in Paris in this large boardroom with the head of procurement of a multi-billion-dollar, euro, whatever, energy company. I'm not even 30, and I'm saying, let's forget all that technical stuff. Let's draw, guys. It's going to be so exciting. They look at me with googly eyes. They followed my lead. I guess I was lucky, maybe, or they just decided to follow my lead. They draw the project, and we put all those drawings on the wall. And of course, what do we see? We see 10, 20 drawings that have nothing to do with each other. And so the visuals did the work for me, which was to show that the problem was not the right one. We're going to sign up for solving the wrong problem. And that created a new narrative for this company, a new narrative for this team, a new narrative for this department. So we worked on that narrative for the next 6 months. We did some tech stuff still, but the engagement shift into this exercise of really trying to go deeper in explaining why we wanted to adapt this way of working, which was about procurement, by the way, I forgot to say this. And this narrative actually became the roadmap, the plan. It became the strategy to make this project a success. So we do this project, and this project worked. This project worked. But what I learned at the end of the project, and was my big aha moment, is that they opened up and said, you know what, Guillaume, something we never told you is that we brought up 2 large firms before you, and they failed because no one had the courage to tell us that we were fixing the wrong problem. No one really helped us diagnose the way you did it, and no one helped us be as creative as as you did it. So that day I learned that what my forte was, my strength, my genius, as you say, Alicia, was to be able to really think outside the box with courage in environments where everything that people try to replicate is actually formal standards and actually non-divergence, but stay really per the what has been established before, which tends to turn organizations very stiff and rigid environments. So that's what I do. So that's the story. And so how do I define what I do now? Because that's a good anecdote. But what I do is actually called strategic narrative. And the strategic narrative helps organizations and business leaders who are really about innovation, adaptation, edgy thinking, change in our society. It helps them do two things. It helps them align people and mobilize them. Because if you don't have that, you can have the best ideas. It's not going to go anywhere. If people don't adopt those ideas, don't give them a try, and accept to lose maybe some comfort in the process, it's not going to work. So number one value is aligning people around those new ideas. And the second thing is kind of the outcome is acceleration of innovation. So today I work with tech companies, organizations who do peace building in the Middle East, like Generations for Peace. I work with beauty companies who are trying to reinvent the narrative around beauty and making more about confidence, inclusion, and change really the way their industry operates. I help those leaders turn those organizations into movements, and that takes courage, that takes time, that takes a different approach, and that's what my company MetaHelm does.
So this is not for the faint of heart. This is not the quick fix necessarily. This is deeper work that is going to have a much more profound impact. Now, I could have leaded in to this interview and said, we're going to talk about your strategic narrative. And people would have been like, what the hell does that mean? But now you've shared how transformational this actually can be for an organization. And I'd love to talk a little bit about, you touched on a couple of things. You talked about mobilizing people. Mm-hmm. You also alluded to the importance of that alignment of people. And we can see this in businesses of any size. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the larger the larger the business becomes, I think sometimes the further away they get from that alignment, mm-hmm. when it becomes so much just about systems and operations, and you kind of forget what is the vision, mm-hmm. or maybe there really wasn't ever clarity on that to begin with. So let's talk a little bit about this alignment piece and how that does actually mobilize people and how that can help a business, whether it's a corporation or organization, whatever it is, to do something bigger, more meaningful, to have those more meaningful connections with their customers, their employees, as well as within their team, their organization.
Well, I'd like to react on a few things you just said. There is research on alignment in companies, and I loved it when you said, it's not just a big company thing. It's for every business, and I want to make sure that it's clear in the ears of people who are listening to us. I took example of large corporations, but I also help startups and way more small entities who still have big ambitions about what they want to change at the same level as a large business. That's the common denominator here. In large organization, I think the research shows in companies about 1,000 people, it's it's common belief to know that, hey, we have a strategy, we know we have a plan, we know we've explored the purpose of this company, but the reality is that only on average 10% of people really know and can interpret and act on where this organization is going. 10%. It's a very small number. Actually, depending on the research, it fluctuates between 7 and 10%. That's been the research is conducted by different organizations. So we know that it's an endemic problem. It's kind of chronic too. When you decide to work on this, what happens is that you're seeing incremental and exponential impact, which is a company of that size that starts to work in a more synchronous way, in a more aligned way, as I like to say, and start to reduce cost of operations, start to grow their impact, start to come across as more meaningful, start to come across as more trustworthy. So the ripple effects are just everywhere. They're not just in terms of branding, but they're also in terms of how people feel about working in those organizations. And this is something that more people pay attention to these days, because we realized generally through COVID that we may have a choice for who we can work or who we may want to work with. And the choice that was all of a sudden given to us was to change the where we work. For no, it's not true for everyone, but for many of us. And so in times where, okay, you can work with anybody, anywhere, from anywhere, at almost any time, being on the same page makes even more sense. Like being clear about what is it that we're trying to accomplish. The second thing I wanted to bring to this conversation here is that when I say alignment, it's not just alignment for what's in it for the organization. Maybe it's profit, maybe it's great launches, maybe for your business, it's more profit. Yeah, like I say, more profitability. It's not just for you. It's being aligned on what is it that you're trying to create for the outside community here. And so I think there is more sensitivity to this. There is more interest in aligning with the true interest of your customers or clients, people you serve. Maybe you're in a nonprofit and your quote unquote customers is a community of people that want a better health system, say. And so that's the alignment that I'm talking about, not just the alignment to run the mechanics of the company inside, but it's an inside and outside alignment.
And when people working within an organization, doesn't matter if it's a small business or a big business, when they feel that alignment, that really is a game changer for everyone. There's so many people, it's cliche even. They don't like their job. They don't like their coworkers. They don't feel heard. They don't feel appreciated. There is a disconnect in the mind and emotionally between, for them, it's just a job. There's no mission that they're standing for within the business that they're working for. And fundamentally, I think we all just inherently need that sense of meaning in life. So now when you're working with your clients, regardless of what size the business is, and you're helping them to get clear on that strategic narrative, does that help to start to bridge that gap? Like, are they all co-creating in this process of coming up with the strategic narrative, or is it only sort of like from the top down and then that inspires the rest of the team? What does that typically look like?
So there are different models, in fact, and I like to always come at a new case with as little assumptions as possible, because I've seen organizations where, it has to be driven top down, otherwise it's not going to work. So I'll tell you an example. I've been working with one of the senior executives of L'Oreal for many years, and she's L'Oreal is a huge organization, and they own many brands, and she has ran several different brands over the years. And I used to work with her at a brand where the culture, the organization was very collaborative. Like everybody had to have their say, and it was a little messy. And that's the way this brand used to perform, and they were performing really well. They're very, very efficient. People were happy. They had great results, delivering high impact products. So pretty positive. And I worked with her for 2-3 years on that brand. And then she moved on and went to another brand in New York, and she brought me in. And I always remember the first meeting I had with her in that same organization. So same leader, same same head of the company, because I like to make a difference between titles and leadership. These are two different things, but same head of the company. But you could tell like the leadership was radically differently distributed. So we come into the meeting, and we had prepared an overview of what we mean by strategic narrative, what examples that she had worked on before, and we had some suggestions, and we were really excited to hear from the people, the other leaders, like, what do you guys think? Let's work on this together, right? And we go into this session, and 5 minutes in, it's cricket. People have nothing to say. Not because they don't have anything to say, but because they are not used to have anyone ask them what they think. Right? So you have to adapt to that. So I don't assume, but okay, to answer your question, Alicia, in general, what we want to get to is, of course, co-creation. It's one of my core principles, because when people have their fingerprints on something, it becomes their own. And a strategic narrative is mostly thought of as an artifact. Oh yeah, it's the story, you're right. It shows up on our website, and it's a product, right? Therefore, we could delegate it to an agency. That's partially true, but it's maybe 10, 20% of truth here, but it's mostly a practice. It's mostly a process. So you want people to participate, because a strategic narrative is something that evolves over time. It's the system of stories that we use every day, that we repeat, that we evolve, that we add with new examples, new anecdotes, new customer feedback, new team feeling, emotional reactions, to continue to operate together. So it's really a system here where people are invited to work on together. So now, where do we start? Typically it's you start with people who have authority, but very quickly I go into, where do we have leadership? Where do we have people who are daring to tell the truth, talk about the elephant in the room, and are willing to explore and go into the deeper meaning of the organization?
Love it. It's very telling, and it makes so much sense, because we all know that nothing is one size fits all.
Yeah.
But it just, that's not the way life works.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It could be different things. So, but some concrete examples. And I always recommend that we work with in an area where we can test new ideas. But so some concrete examples. So, for instance, with that client I was mentioning, she has a keynote. She has an internal keynote to deliver every year. So we know that this is going to be a place where we're going to be able to communicate about this narrative and get some feedback and test and mobilize people around those ideas. It's becoming real. It's not just a theoretical exercise. But in other cases, the work that what we're working on is much more internal. It's an internal strategy document that kind of gets an excuse to have those conversations. Sometimes it's branding. And yes, in that case, it is marketing. And sometimes it's also recruiting. How do we find people who are naturally or already mobilized about the cause we want to defend, who will be actually excited to work with us on changing something for which we don't have the answer yet. We don't have everything figured out. So we need courageous people, because maybe this company will fail. Who wants to join? So that's right. That's what we work on. How do we onboard those people? And that's where also the mindset of the people in charge is highly critical, highly critical.
Well, let's talk for a moment about that, because I am a firm believer, partially because I'm biased, but largely from experience, that mindset really is the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolutely the foundation for what we are going to create and what we're going to experience. If you have the mindset that I don't want to change, it's rigid and dogmatic, you're not going to create innovation. You're just simply not. You're not going to bring in the type of people into your organization that are going to help you grow and expand. It's a slippery slope down the hill.
Mm-hmm.
But now if you have the mindset that you can, right, that growth is possible, that collaboration and cooperation and alignment are win-wins for everyone, I mean, very different mindset, very different results that you're going to create. So when you're working with your clients, what is the necessary mindset to really start to make these types of positive changes that are going to make a substantial difference in somebody's business?
The number one thing is accepting that it will take time to figure out answers, and that you have to enter an experiment. We don't know yet. It may take time, and we're going to start maybe developing new messaging, new ideas, new proof points, new principles that we need to test. We have a sense when we start. We have a sense for what may work because we've got experience. But the thing is, okay, we've got to test out, and we alone don't know the answers. We've got to talk to our clients, customers, and see and hear what makes them excited or what makes them scared. For instance, I work with this technology company here in Seattle who does cybersecurity. They installed operational networks. It's a hot thing right now because many companies are hacked from the corporate networks, and they want to separate those devices and put them in a different network. So without going into too many tech things, but what this creates is, and their clients are excited to get those solutions, but also it creates things that they will lose. They will lose visibility. They will lose status maybe. And so for my clients, it's about entering that work with the mindset that they don't have the answers yet. They have to go explore them and co-construct them with people. That's the number one thing. So I always like to I like to draw, as you probably picked up by now, and I do a lot of drawing, and I use visual techniques in the way I work. And so I go, okay, this is maybe how most people think about it as a straight arrow, okay, and it's, we can figure this out in 2 months and we're done. And I like to draw a spiral that goes a little bit up, a little bit down. You don't know exactly where it's going to go, because that's human nature. So you have to accept that. The second thing is to be able to disagree with common knowledge. When you build a strategic narrative, it's typically to either differentiate, build a new reputation on your market. That's a common benefits that people seek through this exercise. And so you have to be willing to disagree and tell the truth that most people are typically scared to say. So I'll give you an example here. One of my clients is Leslie Feinsag here in Seattle. Years ago, she's been working in tech for many years. And years ago, she was just fed up to see that most of the investments given by venture capital firms went to men. In fact, the data, I think it has changed a little bit now, but there's still so much work to do in that space. Like only 3% of the money goes to women versus men. She was fed up to about that, and she firsthand experienced the imbalance, and she decided to go on a fight against that. And she saw immense resistance. And also in this adaptive challenge, what she realized is that she had to be ready to lose allies, to lose, to lose loyalties, to lose even friendship. She had to disagree with people to fight for that more fair and stable way. So you have to come at this work with the willingness to risk that. So change is, most people say, yeah, everybody resists change. I disagree with that. I think we all love change. Who doesn't want positive change in their life? I think what we are scared about, what we don't want, is losing our comfort, losing loyalties, losing status, losing abundance, losing something we've worked so hard to establish over the years. So you have to come at this work with the realization that, okay, you may lose some friends, you may lose some stability here. And okay, it's not the purpose of this work, don't get me wrong. It may happen, and it's in working with somebody like me that you can have a outside set of eyes that kind of tells you where the gauge might be. Hey, you're hitting the red. Look, around you, what have you heard? What was the feedback? So think about what you're risking right now, and maybe think about pulling back a little bit at this point. So, but there are many principles. I actually a little moment of something that people may be interested in. I list them in my book, in my ebook, Strategic Narrative. I've got 10 principles and 10 things and they're mostly mindset related.
So what you just mentioned there is it's kind of a universal thing. You mentioned fear of change, and I love what you said there, because I agree. People don't fear change just for the sake of fearing change. Mm-hmm. Our mind is wired to protect us. Mm-hmm. And when you believe that if I rock the boat and I'm going to be judged and I'm going to be rejected and I'm going to be ostracized for stepping out and speaking my truth, well, the mind's job is to put the brakes on that. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think, when you use a word like innovation, innovation really is rocking the boat in some way. It's challenging that fear of change.
100%, Alicia.
But if we don't have innovators, if we don't have the courageous few that are willing to step outside of that comfort zone and choose self-honesty, choose self-integrity, be congruent with themselves and what they're sort of being called to do, we'd all still be living in caves.
Yep, that's the essence of evolution right here. In fact, evolution in the sense of evolutionary, like when you look at DNA, how it evolves, you keep traditions. So there are things that are continuously stable throughout generations, and it's the same for your business. From one year to the other, 1 week to the other, you may notice that you keep the same thing and they tend to crystallize. Maybe there are some of your values, your systems, your principles, and they're good for you. But also, and you gain new things. That's the second aspect here. Is number one, you keep things. Second, you gain new principles, you gain new ideas, you gain new ways of working. But you also have to shed and lose and let go of things that will hinder you and make you weak. If you don't do that, then that's how if you don't do that, you stay in the cave. If you accept to do that, to lose some of it, that's how you evolve. And that takes risks and courage. It can be scary sometimes.
But the alternative is stagnation and decline. And I think that's really important for us to remember, is that things don't just get better if you're on the trajectory of them getting worse. Yeah. You don't just wake up one day and all of a sudden all of your problems are resolved. There's always some process that needs to occur, purging and releasing some of the things that are no longer aligned with the direction that you are feeling called to go.
So I love what you're saying here, because if you're really in that, if you are stuck in that stagnation mindset, the opposite of growth mindset, here. What happens is that that's when you're not actually mobilizing people. You're not calling them to arms to change something that can be done. And I'd like to point that out because most people think that what I do is storytelling. And I go, well, sure, there's some of that, but it's mostly narrative. And they go, well, it's the same, right? And I say, no, it's not the same. A story engages people. People will pay for a story, and they'll be fine. They'll consume it, and that's great. But a narrative will mobilize people. People will die for a narrative because they know that they don't have any other choice than change. They know internally that stagnation is going to cause some problem. They have to evolve. Do they know how to evolve? Not sure. But if we get together, if collectively we really come at it with trial and a growth mindset, a trial and error perspective to it, if we're willing to experiment together, bring our diversity, that's how we figure out ultimately those answers. So I like to say that the story is closed-ended. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's established. It's something that does not necessarily promote evolution. We tell stories to perpetuate things. A narrative is open-ended. A narrative leaves the door open, leaves room for people to bring some potential answers and therefore innovate. That's the connection with what you are saying here. Like, it's really two different things. And so I'm so excited to discuss this with you because I don't get too many chances to talk to people who are so tuned into the mindset piece of the work of building a strategic narrative. Most people think about it as a technical thing, but the mindset component is so huge, so important.
Well, this is the perfect way to round out this episode, which I think has been full of really valuable takeaways. And regardless of what size someone's business is, there's always an opportunity for clearly defining that narrative for the ability to grow and expand and innovate. So, Guillaume, can you share with our listeners how they can connect with you?
Well, if you are excited to read more about the principles we explored today, just go to your web browsers and type in strategicnarrative.com, and you will land to my company's website, MetaHelm. And I have a free ebook that I just published in March that you can download. Go there. It's a quick read, and you'll see the core concept explained. And if you want to connect with me on a more one-on-one basis, I'm on LinkedIn, Guillaume Wiatr. Look me up there. It's also on my website.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure, Alicia. It was great. It was so exciting to explore that facet of strategic narrative. Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.